All right. We are rolling here with another episode of the Meat Mafia podcast. We're joined by Ryan Dreyer. Ryan, welcome to the Meat Mafia podcast. What's going on, my man?
Thanks, dude. I am hyped to be here. You guys are a highly respected pod, and I've really enjoyed seeing you guys take off the past couple of months online. So I was honored to get the invite, and I'm excited to chat on a bunch of cool things that I'm into today.
We love it. Ryan, what workout do we have today? We got a swim, bike, run, all three. What's on the docket first off?
Yeah, so right now I'm recovering from a 70.3 I did this past weekend. So today is an off day for me. I did get to splash in the ocean and try to get some electromagnetic balance established in my life here. But it's a pretty light day training wise.
Where are you doing most of your training these days?
So right now, my wife and I are at her family spot in Portsmouth, Rhode Island.
Nice.
So that's where we're at for like around 4 weeks or so. But we moved out to Boulder this past year. So that's where I'm usually located.
Sweet. Both good places to train.
Yeah, I'm pretty fortunate.
Ryan, was that Boulder decision very intentionally motivated by triathlon, or is that somewhere that you just wanted to be?
It was 100% motivated by triathlon. That was like a big COVID opportunity, I think. My wife and I, we had decided to do the Boulder 70.3 that was this past August. And then we decided to live out there in like a long-term Airbnb for 5 weeks leading up to the race. And basically like the second that we got there, we were like, let's just make the move. Let's pull the trigger on it. We had been living in the city in Philly, and like in general, we're just trying to get out of city life. And we'd been going to Boulder for a couple of years. Her aunt lives out there, so we had some like type of roots there, or at least some type of family there, but kind of a spur of the moment thing that just sort of felt right, and we've been enjoying it so far.
Dude, that's awesome. Well, I know for both of us, man, I remember when we first got on Twitter in January, I think your bio might have been different. I think you had mentioned that you were like an animal-based ultra endurance athlete and that you had done a bunch of Ironman triathlons and races. So we very quickly gravitated to your content. And I know that you obviously have this incredible coaching business and you put a lot of great insights onto Twitter just for different things, variations of what people can do to improve their swim, their bike, their run. But prior to us hitting the record button, you have your own pretty incredible story of like, just like nutrition and weight loss and the transformation that you went through to get to the point where you're at now. So I think as a starting point, man, we would love to dig into all that and learn a little bit more about your background.
Yeah, dude, absolutely. So let me try to like find a starting point, and like if you got more questions, just jump in with it. But like I guess for me, like most of my I guess career in fitness or pursuit in fitness was all like gym related. I started with like P90X when I was 18. My best friend in high school, we did it together every day. And that like just, I got hooked on just the idea of fitness in general. But I never really pieced together the nutrition part. So like I lifted really intensely. I followed a lot of like strength related programs and was always in the gym and always loving it. But like I never really reached, I think, like the level that I was capable of because I never had the nutrition dialed. And when I was like 26, I had just kind of grown tired of just like the repetition of just going to the gym and not really like achieving what I thought I was capable of. And I had become quite interested in endurance sports, mostly through like listening to people on Rogan's podcast, like Cam Hanes, Jesse Itzler, Goggins, like dudes like that. I was just like, the way that they're talking about their pursuits, like they're just getting something out of this that I'm not. So that was like kind of my first interest in trying to get into like triathlon and endurance in general. And with getting into like endurance, that just like forced me to get my nutrition right. Like it became super apparent to me, like I could always show up to the gym, and I could show up to the gym like even somewhat hungover and still get like a decent lift in. And my nutrition the day before, like I'm sure it impacts it, but like I had no awareness of that. And when I started like trying to run and ride for like hours and hours, like it just became super apparent, like not only do I need to have my nutrition dialed, like what I'm eating in training, but like the day before impacts it, how I'm eating afterwards impacts it. So that just like brought to me like a level of awareness that I should just be experimenting a little bit more. And I started with like all the generic, like out of the box shit, like Cliff bars, you know, any other kind of bar. I tried like the just like Gatorade type sports fueling and all that kind of stuff, and like found a little bit of progress, but didn't really like correct a lot of bad eating habits that I think I had from like even my childhood. And then like, I guess like the biggest unlock for me was doing this carnivore and plant-based diet challenge that I did in January and February of 2021. And I just had the idea, you know, this was when I was kind of getting into like the Twitter space a little bit and reading just more about, you know, just kind of like all the backwards logic on cholesterol being screwed up from red meat and all the seed oil stuff. And I was like, let me just see what this is all about. So I really committed to like a super restrictive or super committed is probably a better way to say it, carnivore diet, where I was like completely carnivore, didn't even have coffee, only water, salt, animal products in January.
Wow.
And then what I was really trying to figure out is like, I almost wanted to show like negative blood results from the plant-based diet the next month. So like I wanted to show good stuff. I think you guys have chatted with Dave Feldman. I was on his site a lot. I fell directly into the lean mass hyperresponder blood profile, and I felt amazing on that carnivore diet. And then the intention was that on the plant-based diet, I was going to be eating a bunch of like fake meat and crap like that, because I didn't really think it was possible to be getting enough protein without eating that stuff. And kind of like at the last minute, I kind of switched it up, and I had some people who gave me some good insight. And I basically switched that month to being like a completely whole food plant-based diet. So like anything that I ate out of a package, it had to be like single ingredient, like almond butter with just almonds. I did not have anything bad in terms of like processed ingredients. And like that 60-day time frame between both those challenges was like my first time ever going without like added sugar, without booze. And like all of a sudden, like all of these negative eating habits that I've had struggled with my whole life, like just kind of washed away. All of a sudden it was like, I learned a ton from the plant-based or from the carnivore diet that like, if I'm eating enough protein and if I'm getting a healthy dosing of fat, like my body will all of a sudden feel satiated before my mind tells me to stop eating, which like legitimately had never happened to me before. And then all of a sudden, when I got into the plant-based stuff, like I still had some ups and downs with like figuring out my carb balance and my protein balance, because all of a sudden I went from like literally zero carb to most carb on the plant-based. But like overall, that was a real experience to like eat in a whole food and unprocessed way that was like sustainable for me. And then like since then, I've really like just rooted home like really simple eating habits for myself, and that's ultimately like unlocked a ton with what I'm able to do with my endurance sports. You know, I've done 2 full Ironman now. I had done 2 ultras before that challenge, but those kind of like led me into wanting to try that. And yeah, it's evolved a lot. I mean, nutrition is like a super foundational part of my life now. And like when I'm hanging around family and normal people, they think that I'm kind of restrictive with stuff, but from my perspective, like I eat amazing every single day. I enjoy every single meal. And like most importantly, like I've just kicked a lot of the negative habits that like really held me back for a long time and like kind of fucked with my mental health a little bit. So like it's been quite an empowering experience. And then to be able to really like exercise all of that with, you know, really big accomplishments in the endurance sport space has been really fun as well. So that's ultimately like what I've kind of been up to the past couple of years. And I've got a business around it as well. And my wife has gotten super into it. She did Whole30 the time that I did the carnivore and plant-based thing. So like she was kind of right on line with no added sugar and no shit ingredients and no booze. So having her on board with it has been awesome for us as well. And yeah, we're like thriving on it all and really just trying to share it with people and get people involved, because when I see them struggling with things that I used to struggle with, I'm like, dude, it's right here for you. Like you can take it. You got to just jump at it.
How much of it is diet related, do you think?
In terms of like doing the endurance sports stuff?
No, just like the things that like with your clients that, you know, you see people who are struggling with certain things, how much of the problems that people are dealing with are related to just nutrition and their diet in general?
Yeah, so like I've iterated through a couple different like types of clients. When I first started coaching, I gravitated much more to like the weight loss space and the eating habit space. And I like to help people with that, but that's not so much like my bread and butter, because a lot of that is like really emotional and it just takes a lot of deeper work than just being like, eat this, not that, I think. So a lot of the endurance athletes that I work with now, like I can kind of just guide them into the right direction of what to eat to fuel their workouts best, what to eat before, during, after, so that they're recovering well. I mean, the big thing with endurance is just being able to do it and being able to stay consistent with it. You guys are Ironman, so you know the deal, but making sure that your eating is in line so that you can keep doing that is really important. And if people are eating a bunch of processed junk, it's just not really going to pan out well for them. But I think that I'm fortunate that like people who gravitate towards me and people who see what I'm up to, like they're pretty in line with the way that I like to do things. So it's not a huge part of my coaching effort to make sure that they're not eating crap.
And Ryan, what do you mind breaking down what the actual distance is for an Ironman triathlon and just kind of your story with what made you decide you wanted to sign up for something that's just such a long event?
Yeah, so an Ironman is a 2.4 mile swim, a 112 mile bike, and then a 26.2 mile marathon to cap it off. Oh, yeah. And I really like love what I've been able to get into, because when I first got into this and I first bought my bike, my goal was just to like finish a 70.3. And it's really just been like through the repetition of like showing up, learning how to have fun with it, learning how to get through the hard sessions, and like just proving that I can kind of stay in the fight has all of a sudden like unlocked all of this performance within me that like I never would have expected. You know, I didn't even like I think that so much of this stuff has like really taught me that like you need to like give yourself reason to believe in yourself, and you need to give yourself proof that you are capable of exceeding your expectations. And so it's like when I first got into this, like a half Ironman 70.3 to me seemed like out of this world. I couldn't even conceptualize a full distance Ironman. And it's just like, I really stayed in it. I kept, you know, sticking with it. I learned how to have fun with it. I learned how to enjoy it. And I learned how to get through the hard sessions. And then all of a sudden it's like, okay, a full distance to me seemed manageable. And then like, I just kind of kept in it. And now I've got more performance related goals while still balancing like the enjoyment of it all. So it's been a really cool process, because I mean, a couple of years ago, I absolutely would not have expected this is what I'm doing.
Go ahead, Harry.
Go ahead, Brett.
No, I was going to say, it's cool for us to, it's always just awesome to connect with people and just learn a little bit more about like the background and why people sign up for these events. Because we were saying this before we hit record, it's like people will see you now as like a closer to finished version of yourself, like a finished product. You know, you're going to be qualifying for Kona at some point. Your times are ridiculously fast. And it's probably cool to just think back to like the time when you first signed up for a 70.3 and knew nothing. Like I remember when I signed up for my first 70.3, I hadn't been on a bike in like 10 years. And a couple weeks before the race, I'd only done all my training on a Wahoo kicker because I was living in New York. And I went to Central Park like to clip in for the first time. Dude, I literally fell off my bike 10 times and was fucking crying because I was like, I'm literally going to do a 70.3. I can't even clip into a bike, and felt so overwhelmed. And then you think about like just the headspace you're going to get into, and then you do the race and all the confidence that comes from that. It's like people like, it's like the training. That's where you grow and learn so much about yourself. And that's why it's so addicting.
Yeah, it really is, because like, it's just empowering. Like I was looking through some of the original things that I did. And the first year that I was trying to get into this, I broke my ankle in the first year. Then in the second year, it was COVID, nothing was happening. And so like, I started to create these challenges for myself. Like one of them was like every day before work on a Monday through Friday, I wanted to bike 20 miles and then run 4. And I did that. And I remember exactly, I was in Philly. I finished right at the Art Museum steps. And I was like, I feel like I'm a fucking conqueror. Like I just set this goal. I like called it out on my Instagram story. So I applied a little social pressure to myself, and I did it. And I was like, damn, I feel amazing. Another one was like, I decided to run a 50-mile week, which like for big time runners, that's nothing. But like for me, that was the hardest thing I'd ever done. I remember some of those times I'd get back from a run and I'd be like, I don't know how I can possibly run tomorrow, let alone run like 8 miles or whatever I had to do. And so I knocked that one down. There was another fun one that I created that was like a bike ladder challenge, where it was like on Monday, I wanted to ride 10 miles, then 20 on Tuesday, 30 on Wednesday, all the way up to 70 on Sunday. And just like applying those forces of pressure and those time constraints and being like, this has to happen on this day. And if I want to do this, I need to get up at this time to do it before the rest of the shit I have going on, was just like a really fun way for me to just like sort of start knocking shit down. And then what like really unlocked a lot for me was the fact that no races were going on. And the only thing that was happening were ultra marathons. So like I found myself at the end of 2021 going into the fall, and I was like, I'm in the best shape of my life. You know, like I hadn't quite kicked all the nutritional demons. I was going to kick those in a couple of months, but like I had kicked so many, I was literally feeling so good about myself. And I was like, all right, a 50K. Like I never thought I'd be doing an ultra, but like this is the only endurance event that's going on. And I did that 50K, and that 50K gave me the confidence then to the next day, me and a buddy signed up for 100K. That was 4 weeks later.
Wow.
And that 100K was like the craziest thing I'd ever done. It was like a midnight start. It took 18 and a half hours. It was like flashlights in the woods, like just the craziest thing. And it was like the confidence that the first ultra gave me the confidence to try something even harder in the next one. And then once I did that 100K, I was like, I feel completely limitless. Like, let me just keep seeing how I can push this. And then like seeing also other people that do this kind of stuff is a real big motivator for me as well. Like I had only been signed up for a 70.3, but my wife and I, we were out grabbing some drinks or something with some friends, and the guy of the couple that we were with, like he was doing a full. And I was just like, if this dude can do a full, I can do a full. Like and that was what like got me to sign up for it. And it was like, it doesn't need to be competitive. Like I'm better than this dude, I'm stronger than this dude, but I'm just like, if he can do it, I can fucking do it. I'm definitely tougher than this guy. And so it's just been like fun little games like that. And I really enjoy it. And there's a really cool community aspect with it, and people who do it, you know, like you guys, like there's something special about grinding through a build to an Ironman and getting it done on race day.
Yeah, and there's something special about that race day too, that there's some like angels on your wings or something. Like when you get on the start line, Ryan, were you a competitive athlete growing up?
So like I loved sports growing up and I played all of them, but like I grew super late. So like by the time that it got to like fun competitive, like 13, 14, where like people started to get kind of serious, like I just got left behind.
Yeah.
So my main sport in high school was golf, actually.
Nice. But even just that competitive edge and just going out there and knowing that you're about to compete against yourself and like put yourself in the doghouse for a little bit and see what you're made of, like that experience in itself. And you experience almost more during training, but when you're out there with everyone else who's been doing the same training that you've been doing, it's a special day. I don't know if you remember your first, obviously I'm sure you remember those memories of your first race, but yeah, it's an amazing experience.
No, I agree with you. And it's just so fun. Like I've always had a huge competitive spark. Like I didn't really get a lot of those like big I was never the one playing on Friday night in high school. And like I dreamed of being a college athlete and I wanted to play golf in college, but it didn't pan out that way. But I was always like the guy that was like taking it a little bit too seriously in the co-ed softball. And like I have always had like deep competitive desires. And it's been amazing to just get to exercise this and really like compete with yourself and see what you're made of. And yeah, I mean, you got to dig deep to get through a lot of the training. But it is really cool to like allow it to shine bright on race day and just kind of throw yourself into the fire and just be like, fuck, this is it. Like I just crossed the chip timer. I got to swim.
Yeah.
Ryan, you talked about kind of gamifying some of your training just to maybe build a little bit of momentum and make it fun. Is that something that you just came up with by yourself to, you know, kind of intuitively get into the training and make it fun? Or is that something that you read about online?
So that was something that like just kind of came organically. I don't really know that I necessarily heard that anywhere specific. And honestly, now that was like kind of a while ago. That was like in 2020. So a couple of years, and I've been doing a lot of different shit since then. So I'm trying to think back, like, I don't really know. I think it was more like just starting small and like growing it. Like I see that first idea of like doing a 20-mile ride and a 4-mile run every day of the week as just like a random fun thing that I thought of.
Yeah.
And then when I think about like that ladder challenge, like that's a little bit more like calculated and it requires a lot more planning. And it was just like a farther evolution of it. But I've heard lots of people talk about gamifying things now. So like now I'm more aware of it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, maybe that's what I was doing.
Yeah.
But it wasn't so much like, oh, I want to gamify this training. I think that I got fortunate that it like kind of came organically for me.
It's cool though, because I think it helps you build a lot of confidence just setting out that challenge and then checking the box. Like there's something about that that gets your confidence up as you're starting training, where you're like, okay, like I said I was going to do it. I committed to it. I did it. I did it 2 days in a row. I did it 3 days in a row. And then you're like, all right, like this thing's off and running. Like this is going to become a habit here pretty quickly. And like the runs are actually becoming fun at this point because I'm looking forward to actually checking that box. So
yeah, I like 100% there. I created this idea called like the idea of moving into checkmate. And it's kind of like what you're mentioning. It's like you set the goal, you start to like knock down pieces along the way. And then like you reach a point where like in the middle, like you're just in a groove and like you're doing the work and you're like very in process. But then there's a part like when you probably cross like that 75% mark or maybe even 70% where it's like, this is coming down and you're finishing this. And at this point, like, your mind kind of goes to a bit more of like a magical place and you just feel like you're clicking and firing on all cylinders. And then you cross the finish line and it's like, damn, I could have just not done that. And this was way cooler.
Yeah. What do you think is like for some of the athletes that you coach that are maybe going off the couch, or maybe they've done running races before and they're thinking about doing their first triathlon? Are you someone that's like, are you an extremist that you recommend, hey, if you're off the couch, just sign up for an Ironman and go for it? Or are you someone that's like, oh no, start with a sprint or an Olympic distance? Because I think both of us are kind of just extremists where like we like the feeling of signing up for something that scares you. I think it's a good feeling to have, but everyone has like their own way to skin the cat. So just kind of curious, like what your approach is there.
Yeah. So to be honest with you, that's something that I'm like learning through as a coach right now. A lot of the guys that I'm coaching for Ironman Florida signed up for it as an extremist type of thing, had never done any kind of race, let alone a triathlon, and set the goal to do an Ironman. And all of them I 100% know can do it and will do it. But it's more about like, how do I want to formulate their training plan to match their level of interest, their level of commitment, what type of conditioning I want to get them in to have them set up for success so that it's not, completely grueling. So that's like kind of one avatar, I guess I'd probably say. And then another is somebody who's a little bit more measured and maybe a little bit more interested in being in the sport for a couple of years, if not longer. Really for like either person, I definitely encourage them to get race reps in, like kind of like you were saying, Harry, like there's nothing like race day. All the training has been done, the hay is in the barn, and it's just time to go out and be you. And just learning like the race experience of like, holy shit, an open water swim and everybody's freaking out, and transition, holy fuck, the clock is ticking, and making it through the bike, and then transition again to the run. And then I always feel like a big sigh of relief when I make it to the run, because it's like nothing, I guess my race this weekend went a little differently, but like nothing can like go wrong mechanically on the run. So just giving people experience with that is something that I strive for. I've done a couple of like simulations where guys can do like a simulated race on their own, just to get like the reps of swim, bike, run right away, or right in sequence together, but still not quite like race day. So it's a little bit of a balance, but I like to be honest with where I'm at as a coach. And I just had my first guy cross the 70.3 finish line a couple weeks ago. So it's something that I'm kind of learning through and working through.
Do you find that it's the open water swimming that gives most people difficulty when they're thinking about transitioning into triathlon for the first time?
Swimming is always the thing that people are most concerned with, because it's very rare that someone comes to me with a swimming background. Most people know how to run, even if they haven't done running races. I have noticed that like the bike becomes a challenge for people who are just generally new to it. I think that one thing that I was super fortunate with, I'm from Philly, and the roads around my hometown are quite interesting. Like there's a lot of rolling hills, winding roads. If you want to drive out a little bit outside of the direct suburbs, like you can really get some country roads. So I have a couple of clients who are living in more flat, Midwest, South Midwest type of environments. And I think it's a little bit tricky for somebody who's new to triathlon training to just like go out on a straight road that could go for 200 miles and then just turn around and go home. So it's all just things that I try to balance and finagle with, but gamifying it, you know, to bring it back to one of the original points is a big deal. And it does help people a lot.
What was your one discipline that you struggled with the most when you were getting going?
So my first triathlon, I freaked out in the water. I had a huge panic attack. So I had to like pull up, I had to breaststroke for a minute or whatever. But once I like got cooking, like the confidence that I got once I got through the swim and started cruising on the bike, like was like mentally liberating for me. All of the disciplines I've struggled with in my own different way, but all of them I've made big progress with in their own way. So people always kind of say like, you know, or they ask like, what's your favorite? Or I guess like now that I've been in for a while, they ask like, what's my favorite or what do I like the most? And it's like, I really have appreciated that triathlon's given me an opportunity to like really learn and develop like passionate and affectionate feelings towards all three different things that I can, you know, get different benefit from. I mean, I don't have kids, but I kind of imagine that's similar to who's your favorite kid if you've got a couple of them.
Do you think that, do you have any, I know you were talking about gamifying, but just like recommendations or just anything that you do to try and keep training fun? Because we found that like, because obviously, you know, we want to sign up for another full distance down the road. But to be honest with you, it was just like the sheer volume of training, just knowing like, fuck, like on Saturday, I have to like ride my bike for 5 hours, which I know is not a great attitude to have, but it was like, dude, it was just the sheer volume that was tough. So like any mental tips or tricks or things that you do to spice it up, like that would be super helpful for the both of us.
Yeah. So like, I think that one thing that you can kind of check down off of from like the pure volume perspective, is just focusing a little bit more on form. I'm quite form focused these days. And, you know, once you reach a certain level of conditioning, what you can do for X amount of time, as long as you've got the nutrition right, you know, that can really be amplified and kind of like an exponential value. So you guys, I would say, are like over the initial hump of like, you need to do the volume to get to the first Ironman, and you just are going to have to do 5 hour rides. And if you don't, it's going to be pretty challenging for you to do a 6, maybe even 7 hour ride on race day and have a good time doing it. But like once you normalize that distance and like kind of get that in your bag a little bit, you can definitely come down off of it. I just switched up who my coach is a couple of months ago, and I have a little bit more freedom with like what I get to do now. So that's like been welcomed by me, because even though I love this stuff, like there are days when it's like, all right, check what's on the plan. Fuck, I got like a 3,000 yard swim and I just don't really feel like doing that. So like having a little bit more freedom with my plan has been really helpful. Just like really rooting home in my mind and like increasing my belief in myself that I can do the distance without like needing to prove it in training has been really helpful. And really like coming back to my form stuff has been helpful for me. Like I'm doing a lot of track sessions these days on my runs. My endurance runs aren't really anything much more than an hour at the present moment. I'm sure they'll ramp a little bit as I get closer to Florida in November, but just drilling down those kind of things, I think has been a little bit of a change in perspective that's been welcomed.
Ryan, take us into your mindset going into Florida. So you're hoping to qualify for, or you're going to qualify for Kona. Is that really the reason for going down to Florida? You're looking to come away with a Kona qualification?
Yeah, so I'll pause you there. You don't need to be graceful on the you're going to qualify. I've said that at each of the 2 that I've done and come nowhere close. So now I've just accepted that each time I'm just going to keep saying that until it comes through. So I'm going to qualify at Florida. Yeah. The impetus for signing up for Florida is really around this group of dudes that decided to do it. So my buddy Zach Homel committed to doing Florida, and then there were 3, 4, 5 building guys that signed up for it as well. And so I've now started coaching all these guys who are doing it, and I decided to do it with them. So it'll be an awesome experience. This has been like the first year that I've been able to really build up my triathlon coaching business. So I kind of see it as like a pinnacle moment at the end of the year. I care way more about I want to have 100% success rate for all the people that I'm coaching to cross the finish line. So I'm like super focused on that one. And I think that the Kona qualification is just going to going to come true on its own, honestly. I mean, I'd love to ball out at Florida, but I was a little bit farther away than I expected at Texas, but I'll have a shit ton more experience by the time I get to Florida. So we shall see.
What is it about Kona that's captured your attention as that goal?
Well, like, I think the first thing is like, it's just something that I've never, ever thought that I'd even try.
Yeah.
So like that in itself, like there's like this allure to it that's like, oh my God, this is so out there that I can't believe that I'm actually even trying for this. And I'm fortunate that in the area that I grew up in, and the local bike shop that I started at, there was a woman there who was like kind of a local legend, and she had qualified for Kona, I think, a couple of times. So like in the back of my mind, I've always like known that it is possible because I know someone who's done it. Which just like for me, that hits on a different level than just being like, oh, people do this. It's like, oh, that lady is a teacher. She literally gets up at 3 or 4 in the morning to swim, and she's a beast, and she's in the 40 some age group, and she goes to Kona. So it's been cool to like, just with all the iterations of like my development and all the progress that I've made, for like my mind to like unlock slowly on being like, wow, that might actually be within reach. And like, it was really something that just like came to be because like, I just felt like I was making a lot of progress that I never would have believed in before. So it was like putting the bar far enough where it's like, I'm not putting a cap on myself. And as I've just gotten into triathlon more, like that's the pinnacle of the sport. That's really the pinnacle of Ironman. And so, you know, I've never been to Hawaii. That'd be a great reason to go.
That's incredible. How different do you feel mentally now, thinking about yourself now versus the person prior to doing 2 Ironmans and all these endurance races that you've been talking us through?
Yeah, it's like, you know, people see like the physical change that I've, you know, gone through, and they see some of the physical stuff that I've done, but it's like mentally, I just have such a better relationship with myself. It's like literally life changing. Like I used to just be like so bogged down by like not having control of my eating habits, not like pursuing things that I actually found meaningful, you know, caring more about the opinions of other people than the opinions of myself. And like through time and through like literally just like training sessions and now races, like I've really been able to like overcome all of those limiting beliefs. And so like, I'm still aware that like, I still have like blind spots and I still have limiting beliefs in some capacity, but like a lot of the limiting beliefs that I am catching now is more about the fact that like, I just wasn't aware of ability. Like, I guess, I don't know. One thing is like, you know, with this new group that I'm working out with in Boulder, like I get to go to track every week, and it's like, there are guys that are just absolutely blowing by me. So it's just like, kind of similar to the lady who qualified for Kona at home. It's like, I'm seeing this with my own eyes. I see that people can do this. And so it's like, as long as I just stay in the fight, kind of like I was saying in the beginning, like, I think all this stuff is going to come true for me. And like, now that I've kind of hooked myself to like the positivity mindset of like, I'm pursuing this goal, this means a lot to me, I'm getting value from this, I'm feeling accomplished in this, like on an everyday basis, like my headspace is just so much lighter. And I think it carries over to like literally everything else I do. So that's something that I'm like trying to improve on, like kind of being able to share that side of triathlon, because I think that I just share a lot of training related stuff, and I do drop in some mindset stuff, but like, it's really been a transformative experience for me, and it's 100% been fueled by endurance sports.
How do you think about just like carbohydrate fueling and nutrition, specifically around just your workouts and races and things like that?
Yeah, so like I've kind of come from both sides of the spectrum on it. My first Ironman, I tried to do low carb. So like I used to be huge into fasting. Pretty much every training session I would go into fasted. If it was a long one, I would fuel at some point, but I wouldn't ever take in those carbs beforehand. And so that was my strategy for the race. Like I went into the race, I did like a fatty coffee kind of thing. So I had calories, but I had no carbs. And I cramped 3 times in the swim. And I was just playing catch up on the nutrition all day. So that was a big like light bulb for me and a big learning experience. Like I dug into some more research after that. And I just kind of realized that like, once you reach a certain level of intensity with your heart rate, like your body just starts looking around for glycogen. And it's just like, if you want to do the low carb thing, you can do it, but like you need to stay in a relatively low heart rate zone. I know that there are people like Zach Bitter who like take it, who really knock it out of the park and have it figured out, you know, from a full spectrum. But where I was at, I just wasn't getting that so much. I wasn't nailing that on every level. So I've come over now to the other side, and I fully do carbohydrate fueling, big bowls of oatmeal before big rides. But a lot of that for me, like I kind of circle it back to like some of the eating habits that I really had to kick. And it's like, that's why that carnivore and plant-based challenge was so huge for me. Is it's like, I almost like didn't believe that I'd be able to have carbs a lot without eating like a gluttonous fat fuck. And it's like, I had to prove it to myself that I could, and I had to trust myself that I could. And like over the past year or so, I mean, it was only in October that I did that Ironman low carb. So it's an evolving process for me, but I've 100% felt the negative effects of being under fueled when trying to push the body to the limit.
What have been some of the nutritional nuggets that you've taken away from your training and your, you know, Ironman pursuits?
Yeah. So like, I think that I do like the real food approach. So my big fueling is maple syrup. I know a lot of guys online talk about like honey as like a pre-workout or an intra-workout for lifting. I had tried that, but the acidity of honey didn't really sit well with me when I was like on the move so much. So I tried the maple syrup, and that's been really solid. I think that one of the things that's like tough for people when they try to fuel for endurance sports is just the logistics of it. Like those goos and the gels, like they just make them convenient, right? They're for the masses. So with my maple syrup, like I get this little like 5-ounce hydro flask off of Amazon. I've got my maple syrup jug from whatever grocery store. And I fill that up, and I bring that with me. And I think that it's super easy. And like, I found a system that's worked for me. But a lot of times, like when people are just like thinking about, oh, what am I going to have? Like, they're just like, all right, what can I carry? What's like logistically easy?
Yeah.
And then the other thing for me is like, I used to have the mindset of like, oh, like I should have some food like every hour or so. But I've really shifted over to like fueling every like 15 or 20 minutes with just like a little bit less, but just more consistent. I've been able to experiment with like some CGM and blood glucose levels. So I've really seen some positive impacts from doing that and just having more stable blood glucose. So I try to do my best to like test around with it, but like ultimately you got to find something that's like easy to do and repeatable. And so I feel like I've been fortunate to find that with the little maple syrup and hydro flask solution, but logistically, I think a lot of people run into some issues.
So like that 70.3 that you just did, was that maple syrup fueled?
Yeah, that was all maple syrup. So I like have 2 of those 5-ounce flasks that I throw into my jersey pockets. I have those on the bike, and then I have them on the run as well. The only other things that I take in mid race is I do like some amino acids, try to get some of the benefits of what would be having protein without, you know, if I want to take in protein on the bike, real food protein is very complicated on the bike. I have to have like a burger patty or something, and I ain't doing that. So I grab the Keon aminos. I take some magnesium, and then I just experimented for the first time with some Tylenol and caffeine. I did caffeine previously, but this was like a Tylenol that had caffeine in it. So that was kind of the scope of my fueling strategy.
How important is sodium for you in a race like that?
Super important. So the 3 main things are like basically carbs, water, and sodium. Carbs, water, salt. So most of the time I really I'm a huge Redmond's guy. We have like the bag, fine grain. I put it in like almost every water that I have. So that's what I have on the bike. And then I try to do it on the run as well. You know, you've got to be getting new bottles at aid stations. So I ran into a little bit of a logistical issue this weekend, and I tried to switch over to like, there's like salt tubes, and people do like salt licks. I don't know if you guys have heard of that. And I just didn't have that quite dialed down. So I ran into some issues at like mile 9 of the run. But generally, like the things that I'm focusing on is like making sure that I'm getting enough calories, and the calories are all coming from carbs. I got the amino acids down, so that kind of checks like an additional box on the food part of everything. And then just water and salt, because salt's huge. Like if you're not getting electrolytes, you're not getting proper muscle function. And as I sort of found this weekend, I still haven't figured out exactly what the hole was, but the body will shut down if it's just not being fueled right and you're pushing it to the limit with some of these distances.
The fueling thing is like the 4th element of the entire race, right? And we've always found that we've learned like 1 or 2 things new about nutrition. Do you feel like you're still evolving your understanding of how to like really dial it in? Because it's one of those things. Like I recently ran a marathon, and I've run multiple marathons before, but I like clonked out. I was going to hit my goal, and I like clonked out like 3 or 4 miles out because my sodium levels just dropped. It was hotter than I was than expected, and I just wasn't prepared for it. And like you live and you learn, right? But at the same time, like those lessons come in doses. So I feel like it's always an iteration, always a constant iteration.
Yeah, and like that is 100% how it works for me. And that's funny because I was like 4 or 5 miles from the finish, and like my body was like, you're not moving. And I think it was related to my sodium. I don't think I was getting enough salt in from those licks. And I don't think I was getting enough water in. I was trying to just like drink on the fly at aid stations. I kind of usually carry something, and I just decided not to do that for this race. But that's like one thing that I really love about like being in triathlon and being in endurance is that like you should always be testing, and you should always be as critical as possible of all feedback that you get, because it's only going to make the next one better. And like I think just like having that mindset has been what's allowed me to like make a lot of progress with like my performance, because like none of this stuff started performance focused, and like all of a sudden just by like being inquisitive and being learning, or having a learning mindset and being open is just like allowed me to just fuel my body better. And like, I mean, kind of similarly to like my entire nutrition philosophy. And I'm sure that you guys resonate with this, but like, once you give the body the inputs that it can thrive on, like, dude, you kind of just sit back.
100%. Yeah. That's interesting. And so many people with Ironman specifically, they stress out about that nutritional discipline. So for you to just have your group of foods that are dialed in, that you know your body thrives on, that's not going to lead to cramping or GI stress, like that is massive. Because for us in our first Ironman, right, it's like, you know, trial by fire. You don't know if you've packed enough, or you don't know if you're going to cramp or not cramp, or what the hell's going to go on. But shout out Element. We didn't cramp at all, which was sick, because we actually, we went to a pre-race session with Natasha Vander Merwe, who was Nick Bare's Ironman coach. And she was the one that told us. We were like, hey, we were thinking about doing this for our sodium and her hydration. And she was like, no, you basically need to like double what you're going to do. And if she didn't give us that tip, dude, I know for a fact, I have these weak ass hamstrings that cramp all the time. I would have been absolutely sauced on the run.
Yeah, dude, that's funny. I used to be so hard on Team Element, and I don't know, I just got lazy with it. And I think that if I had Element this weekend, I would have done better. So it's like back to the drawing board. But yeah, like you got to get the Element package. I think they have 1,000 milligrams of sodium in it.
Yeah.
And that's like the number that I shoot for, at least on the hour, more if it becomes hot and humid. But yeah, dude, like if the sodium starts going awry, then shit can start go awry all over the place. But it's like you start to learn these things, and then all of a sudden it's like, okay, well, like my everyday nutrition is cake compared to this. Like this is nothing anymore. I'm just eating clean, and my body's rocking along. And it's like, as long as I can teach it and guide it to do these extreme things, then like bringing it back to just like the mental health part of everything is just like my everyday is so easy from a food perspective.
Yeah. Do you have any like epic training stories of like things that maybe didn't go well? Because I think about Harry and I had some absolutely epic, just like, oh man, I remember we were supposed to go, we were trying to find, when we first moved to Texas, we were trying to find like a good path, hit like a 5-mile ride. And we saw that Nick Bare had hit like the Ronald Reagan Expressway in Texas. And we're like, oh, like it looks like there's some cars, but it's not too bad. Like little did we realize he had like a truck trailing him. So he was totally safe and blocked in. So like we buy all of our training stuff from Walmart. We've got all of our nutrition. We got our bikes ready to go. And dude, literally we get like 2 miles down the highway, and these cars are literally going like literally 85, and it's 2 assholes on the side of the road on our bikes.
Yeah.
Like we literally bailed, and I think we did like 4 miles, and we were supposed to do a 5-hour ride. Like, do you have any and it's so funny in hindsight, but like, do you have any stories like that?
Yeah, dude, I've got 2 that come to mind, and I'm glad I just started the first one. So when I like first got into this stuff and I was just like pushing myself on my own, you know, if you're starting to run and you start to, you know, for me, it was like, if I start to hit 7-8 miles, like my GI system is not used to this. So this was when I was living in Philly, And I at one time, one of my original challenges was I was trying to run every single street in Philadelphia, and I ended up just running down a bunch of one ways and turning around and wasting my time a lot, and I did not get it done. But anyway, I like started in my neighborhood, which was like on the northeast side of the city, and I ran down towards South Philly, and it was right around when COVID hit. So like no places were open. You couldn't get in anywhere unless you like had a mask or whatever. And all of a sudden, dude, like the GI wave came. And so I like had to scurry into this South Philly parking lot. And luckily there was like an attendant booth that was unoccupied. And so I made my way behind the booth. I didn't have any wipes. So I didn't have any, I was totally unprepared. I had to use like a wet old newspaper. It was like probably one of the most like humbling experiences of my whole life. And it was a huge reminder that if you want to start pushing your running distance, you got to get your shit figured out and you got to travel prepared. Yes. Another one is probably like a good little lesson on like how I've just changed my perspective on the distance stuff. So my wife and I, before the Boulder race last year, the Boulder half Ironman, we did like a sprint leading up to it. And our coach had like a 3-hour recovery ride on the session for the next day. And like, I just didn't really know what I was doing. And like, now if you told me to go out for a 3-hour recovery ride, like, it's just the idea of just going out for the day. Like you can stop at a couple coffee shops, you can do your thing. Like you're just kind of chilling out on the bike for most of the day. But for us, we were like, all right, it's a 3-hour ride. We got to go like ride for 3 hours and try to keep it a low heart rate and all this. And we ventured up to this town above Boulder that we didn't know at all. And we were on the main road, really similar, like cars are whipping by. It wasn't quite 80 miles an hour, but it was like a totally non-biking road for two semi-inexperienced bikers. Yeah. And my wife and I are like starting to bicker. She's getting feisty. Neither of us are fueled right. So we're like, fuck, this whole thing just sucks. Yeah. And it's kind of funny because now that's the town that we live in. That's just above Boulder.
There you go.
Yeah,
it all works out. But dude, those training stories are just the best because it's like when you're in the moment, you're taking it so seriously. And then afterwards, it's like, that's honestly where all the gold is. It's like these, it's like all these collective experiences. It's like one big adventure, honestly, which is why this stuff is it's so fun. It's addicting, honestly.
It really is. And I dropped a tweet the other day, just like about the idea of type 2 fun. I really didn't used to be familiar with that. And my sister described that to me and I'm like, oh, that's what I do. Yeah. And it's just like, I was thinking to my race on Saturday, it's like, it was the best race of my life until I hit mile 9. And then it was like the hardest thing that I feel like I've ever done. And in those moments, it was like, I literally need this to be over immediately. I want to die. And then it's a couple hours passes and it's like, that wasn't so bad. That was pretty good time. I'm definitely going to be back.
It's funny. How long does it take you to usually sign up for your next race after you finish? Because I feel like that margin of like sign up period has shrunk now. It's like, 2 days after you're like, all right, let's sign up for something else. Let's go for it.
Yeah. So when I was first getting into this, it became like a little bit of a thing where it was like the next day I'd sign up for the next one.
Nice.
So like the first ultra that I did, the next day I signed up for the next one. The day after my first Ironman, that was when I signed up for Texas. But now that I was like circling the wagons on my year, I kind of had other things that were already on the calendar. So I haven't quite had to do that. But it's cool now because like now that I've been in it for a while and now that I've like normalized a lot of this stuff for me, like I get to like piece together like a racing season, which like, I don't know. I was always someone that wanted to be a professional athlete, like playing on like the like tournament team in my little league when I was 9. Like, dude, I still remember like I had a walk-off triple in the tournament and it was like one of the best moments of my life. And I just remember
hand in the air, fist pumping.
Hand in the air. I remember exactly. The coach had called for 2 sacrifice bunts and I fouled both of them away and he was livid. There was a guy on first. It was the last inning. And then I just launched one over the left fielder's head. And I'm like, we walked off. Team went nuts, felt incredible. And so now like to be, it's like, I think about it from the perspective of like, okay, like I had a ton of fun playing high school golf, but like, I didn't really have like the, playing on Friday night under the lights in football or having the basketball game. Like I loved doing those things, but I just didn't have it then. And my college experience didn't pan out like that at all. But it's like, all right, I now all of a sudden am 29 and like, I pretty much feel like I'm living the life of a professional athlete and I get to help people do it too. And I get to help people get into it. And my wife likes it. So like, for me, it's pretty fun to just have it sort of come all full circle in a way. And the idea of a race season, I mean, just to get back to my first point, it's just like nuts to me.
Yeah. And is a race season for you at this point like a couple 70.3s leading up to a big full distance? Are you doing multiple full distances now? Like what's your race season this year?
Yeah, so this is like the first season that I've had, and I don't really know if I've done it right. I'm still trying to like gauge,
Yeah.
just advice from other people. But I did Texas in April as my first race of the year, and that was a full distance Ironman.
Yep.
And a big learning for me from that one was like, okay, it would have been helpful to have some race reps leading into it, like a sprint or an Olympic. But it's tricky at that time of the year, like it's April. Then this race that I just did, so it's now June 21st, the 18th, that was a 70.3, and that was my second race. And then the only other race that I've got on the calendar right now is Florida, which is in November. So that's a full. But I am going to add in a local race that's either going to be a sprint or a half in September. So like I'm feeling it out. I still want to continue to probably do like at least an Ironman a year, but I'll probably just try to place them strategically. And like one of the coolest things for me, like in the present moment, and that I got to realize this past weekend is that like after you do two fulls, like my perspective on the half distance has completely changed.
Right.
So it's like now these are like, I mean, my body needs more time to recover than I'm probably giving it credit for, but like I perceive it as like I've done training sessions longer than this. Like I had to do bike rides for Ironman training that were longer than this entire race. So it's just a different perspective, a different level of push. But there's still a lot of strategy that I need to figure out with the whole season concept.
Ryan, are there any sources of inspiration for you? You mentioned a few, Goggins, Cam Hanes, and a few others. Are there any other ones that come to mind when you're working through some of your triathlon stuff and trying to really dial it in and get that edge that you're looking for?
Yeah, so probably like my favorite dude in that whole realm is Jesse Itzler. I love everything about him. I really love the way that like he continues to do these and he doesn't really train all the time for them. And one of his like big lessons that I've taken away is like basically sign up for epic shit and then learn from people who have done it. He has so many great stories of just like learning from people who have run an ultra to go run an ultra, and like applying that mindset has like allowed my entire coaching business to evolve and blossom. And it's kind of allowed me to like push it from both ends of the spectrum. Like I get to be the person who signs up for the crazy thing and I get to learn from people who have done it. And now that I want to do better, it's like I can learn from people who have done it better who can teach it better. And then on the other end, it's like I can be the person who has done the epic shit and I can help people get into it. And I just kind of generally love everything about what he's up to. He's a lunatic, and so I dig it. One of the things that he posted, he did Ultraman a couple of months ago. I don't know how closely you guys follow him, but that's like the 3-day event that I don't even know what the distances are. I think it's like a 6-mile swim. I think it's like a 190-mile bike ride, and then I think it's a 50K on the next day, or maybe a 52-mile run.
I think it's double. It's 2 Ironman, right, Brett?
It's a double. Yeah, it's a double Ironman over 3 days.
Double Ironman over 3 days. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's 100% something that's like on my kind of list in the back of my ear. But he posted something about earning the hat. And he said that they gave him the Ultraman hat in like the swag bag when he signed up. And he left it in his hotel room and would look at it every night when he got back, and he wouldn't put it on until after he finished. He posted a picture and he said he earned the hat. So I've kind of stolen that after both Texas and my race this past weekend. I like threw up a picture on Instagram and tagged him and said earned the hat, and he's replied to both of them.
Hell yeah.
So like that's just sort of been a really cool way that it's just like, I don't know, that's somebody who's mega millionaire entrepreneur, has achieved all the success in the world, and it's like I feel really fortunate to have been able to take in some cool lessons from him, and then like to be able to just like interact with him super briefly, like is really cool for me. So I don't know, like one day I want to be like that for somebody else. Like I want to be able to have people be like, damn, like Ryan Dreyer did that, and I think I can do that, and I like the way that he did it, and I think I want to try that way myself, and that's kind of what I'm working towards.
Yeah, I think the three of us have that in common. He's an incredible person. It's like you even look at someone like David Goggins, who's inspired millions of people. The only reason why we even know about David Goggins is because in 2005, they ran the San Diego 1-day together, and Itzler like consciously noticed that he was doing it by himself with a chair, no supplies. And he was like, anyone that can motivate themselves to do this race after like breaking all the metatarsals on their feet is someone that I need to just like become friends with. So he literally got lunch with the guy and invited him to live with him for a month, and the rest is history. But like you said, man, just the fact to like be so financially successful and then still just choose to do things like Ultraman and like, what's the term? It's like civilize the mind, but savage the body. Like, I feel like he perfectly embodies that, which is pretty cool.
I hadn't heard that before. Civilize the mind and savage the body.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah. One of the taglines on my website is like, basically escape average and become savage. And that's just like something that I resonate a lot with, because I was just living soft, dude. I was living soft. I got comfortable in my corporate job. I got satisfied with going to happy hour and having emotional releases just through partying and doing whatever. And I eventually came to a point where I was just like, damn, dude, this shit is not fulfilling me in the way that I think I can be living my life. And through dudes like Jesse Itzler and Goggins and Cam Hanes and Rogan, those are probably like the core four that have had a huge impact on me. I mean, Rogan has been the way that I've learned about those dudes. But like, it's just awesome. It's just like, fuck, dude, you can go live whatever life you want and you can create whatever you want. And like, look at you guys, like you guys started online in January, you said.
Yeah.
And like, look how big you guys have grown. And a lot of the guys that you've gotten on here, and like to be on here after some of those dudes is like a huge honor. And it's just awesome to be like in a space where like I'm able to connect with people who are building, and the online community just through like Twitter and through other people that just do this kind of stuff has just been like life-changing for me, because a lot of the guys that I've like come to work with and just like chatted with just through like everything that I'm up to, like the one really big core theme is just like, you know, my close group of core friends around where I live aren't really into this, but I think I want to be into this. And so I need to like connect with people who are into this kind of stuff. And it's just really fulfilling for me. And I'm sure for you guys as well, to be able to kind of host a space where people can kind of feed that energy.
Yeah, I think the online communities are more powerful than people give them credit for, because you can connect with people having not met them in person, share so much, you know, have like a 95% common interest, and that relationship can be all you need to push yourself to an Ironman or like an Ultraman or whatever it is that you're training for, like your 5K, whatever you're trying to do to get out of bed and get after it. And I think that I like, when I come across Twitter, I see all these accounts. There's so many people who are just pumping out positive stuff, and it's like so refreshing. Like I really think that there's a lot of great things that are happening online. Like as much as people want to say like, you know, stay off your phone and all these things, like I totally agree with you, but also there's these connections that you can't build, you know, just because it's hard. Like you're not always surrounded by people who are just getting after it and doing incredible things.
Yeah. And one thing that's like really cool about it too is like, I don't know, you guys know, I put out like authentic shit. So like you guys, we connect deeply immediately because you guys like know what I'm about, and I know what you guys are about, and I know what I care about, and vice versa. And just like on the positivity thing, like it's been really helpful for me to have like an outlet to like speak into existence who I want to be. And Twitter has been like 100% a vessel for that. Whereas it's just like, I don't know, if I didn't have the opportunity to like send out tweets every day, like maybe I would have to be like, I don't know, writing shit down all the time, which just like is possible, but like, again, like what's the friction for it? And like, just to be able to decide on who I want to be and what kind of life I want to live, and have something like, you know, Twitter or other online channels to really speak that into existence has been like massive for just like my personal development and character development.
Yeah, we talk about that all the time. It's like, you just need to know how to use Twitter the right way. Like it's an amazing tool to develop your writing, get your thoughts on paper, build a brand, connect with people, and like take it a step further, man. It's like invite people to your podcast or jump on calls with people, like build those genuine connections. Like, cause to your point, you might not have a bunch of people in your day-to-day life that are doing Ironman triathlon or into a carnivore diet, but you can go on Twitter and build this virtual community almost instantly with people that are into the same passions that you are. And it's like momentum, like energy, like anything else. It helps you get better and it sharpens the sword. Like even just from this podcast, man, I already feel more motivated to want to like sign up for my next endurance event. And I'm sure for you, it's probably a great feeling just getting DMs from people like telling you how helpful you are to them and their endurance journey. And it gives you motivation to keep going further with what you're doing too, right?
Yeah, it's like a big cycle, and it's just like you kind of just have to jump into it yourself, and all of a sudden, you know, you spend a little bit of time and you'll kind of feel out your place in it, and you'll gravitate to people and people will gravitate to you. And it's just like, as long as you get yourself in like the whirlpool of it, it's just like it's going in a positive direction, and anybody that's involved is going to be along for the ride.
Well, Ryan, you're a super inspirational guy, and we're excited to see where your Ironman endeavors take you. We know Kona's definitely on the path of your success journey, so we're excited to see when you make that leap to Kona. It's going to be exciting. Where should people come into contact with you? What's the best place for people to come across your writing, your work, coaching business?
Yeah, so Twitter and my website, probably the easiest spots. Twitter, I'm at Ryan V Dreyer. I'm sure you guys will link it down in the show notes.
Yep.
My website is traintribal.com. So I've got a couple articles up on there, a couple pieces of info on my coaching business, and kind of the tribe that I've built out and the people who are working with me, and having a lot of fun with it. So if anybody's interested, come join.
Dude, 100%. Well, we appreciate you coming out more than you know, man. And obviously good luck with the training for Ironman Florida. And hopefully we can link up in person for a steak and a bike ride or something like that. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, dude, 100% on the docket. Where are you guys even located? I don't know that I know. Are you still in Austin area?
Harry is, and I'm in San Diego. So we're kind of dividing and conquering. So we should find like a central location. I mean, dude, we could even come out. Oh, Harry, where in Colorado are we going to be in July? Is it Crawford? How far is Crawford from you, Ryan? Do you know?
I'm not great on the sub-cities of Colorado just yet. I'm slightly north of Denver, northwest.
Yeah, it's like Grand Junction. It's a little further west.
Okay. Well, regardless, we've made the connection here, and we know we've got the interest, so we'll make it happen at some point, no matter where it is or when it is.
Oh yeah,
absolutely. Well, thanks so much for doing this, brother. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, dude. Thank you guys so much for having me on. I'm excited for this to get out there, and I appreciate the opportunity.
Thanks, Ryan.